Hello guys, welcome to my channel, Mr. Ade Bet Predict. In today's video, we are going to be unveiling top 5 games as the reason why they happens to be a big deal for over 1.5 goals today. So we are going to be breaking down the stats, their performance, and some of their average total goals in the last previous games. Actually, I'm very sure that some of the bettors watching these particular videos are already aware of how these particular betting strategies work. Actually, it means that at least the match should end up in 2 goals. No, it doesn't concern us about the teams that actually scored or the team that didn't score. What we are mostly concerned about is that at least they should have 2 goals. All right, so like the reason why over 1.5 goals is even better when it comes to predicting is because it is more safe compared to predicting over 2.5 goals, because we have some people that they are mostly interested in predicting games as over 2.5 goals, and this particular over 2.5 goals can offer odd range for like games that we are currently seeing on the screen. So we are going to break down some 5 games today to put you guys through why they are actually best for us to go for as over 1.5 goals. All right, so most of these particular games are under England Premier League. All right, so now the first game that we have on the list happens to be under the England Premier League, which happens to be the match between Tottenham and Newcastle. And first, if you guys click on this particular match and go to the start, actually this particular bet platform is not always available on every region, but in case you have this particular bet platform, it's like an advantage for you guys. But if you don't have, no problem, you guys can actually explore the last 5 games of the team against each other and against other opponents. And also, I'm going to tell you the reason why England Premier League happens to be one of the best league to go for as over 1.5 goals. Here is the reason why. So if you guys go to a particular app, I've always showcased this particular betting app on this platform, and this app you can actually use it to generate predictions. But there is a particular segment and category from this particular app that will show you the best league that you can actually predict your games as over 1.5 goals. So this is the headline of this particular category, the best leagues for over 1.5 goals. So the number one of it, and the leagues that actually has 100% our outcomes of over 1.5 goals, we see it as this: and Armenian leagues, Algeria League Cup, Kosovo Cup, and so many like that. But if you notice this particular leagues very well and this particular tournament very well, most of it are 100% over 1.5 goals, and we have some that are actually 98%, 97%. The reason why England Premier League happens to be one of the best, even though they are not in the top 10 best leagues to go for as over 1.5 goals, at least their leagues has this particular probability of coming out as over 1.5 goals with above 80% assurance. Here is the position they are. So we have them here as 85% chance that most of their games will end up as over 1.5 goals. So what you just need to do is to consider their stats and the last previous games for both home and away team. Now let us look at the games that they have today actually. Alright, so if you click on it and go to the stats category of this particular app, you are going to see some data in bar chart that will give you the information about the percentage of how the score goes very well, and this happens to be for the over 1.5 goals and under, and the yellow category represent that at least 14.8% of their games end up as under 1.5 goals and 85.2% of their game end up as over 1.5 goals. Actually, this is not the main focus in this particular video, just a digression. All right, so let us move back to the start of the games that we are currently working on. All right, so if you are to look into these particular games very well, there are some behavioral factors and the logical factors that we always need to consider when we are predicting over 1.5 goals. If you know Tottenham very well, there happens to be a team that if I thought they are going to score goals, it is very rare that they will not concede in that particular match, and if they concede sometimes they can end up losing the games. If you notice that the last 5 games they've conceded, except in just a particular match against Southampton, and the match ended up in 0-5, and the match against Manchester United they ended up in 4-3, and the match against Liverpool ended up in 3-6, and another one against Nottingham Forest ended up in 1-0, and the one they played the last game against Wolf ended up in 2-2. Actually, what you just need to do in when it comes to predicting over 1.5 goals is that if you can check the behavioral factors of this particular game, at least in their last 5 games, 80% of their games ended up in when they concede, or at least ended up in over 1.5 goals. And looking at the away team also, which happens to be Newcastle, most of their games in the last 5 games, they've been able to keep at least 4 clean sheets, and their last 5 games ended up in 100% over 1.5 goals. Now, moving on to the last previous games against each other, you guys will notice that most of their games always ended up in over 1.5 goals. But what you just need to look into it is just that at least in the last 5 games against each other, they must have scored 80% of their games as over 1.5 goals. But in case you are using this particular bet platform, there are also segments and category that you can actually consider to validate your predictions. For example, if you guys are checking this particular head to head, this particular uh, um, unit and categories, I always make use of it very very well in most of my videos about over 1.5 goals. Now let us click on it and let us see the average stats that we want to check there, because at least the teams that you want to predict as over 1.5 goals must have been scoring goals. Like their average goal scored must be more than the average goal scored by the leagues. Like in general, in every leagues we have a particular pattern in which they used to score their goals. Some leagues their average goal scored maybe around 2 or 2.5 or sometimes 1. These leagues, you will know them that okay, these leagues are mostly playing under 3.5 goals, and that is the pattern of that league. But there are some leagues that their average goal scored will be around maybe 3 or 3.5 or something like that. And if the team you are predicting your games on is able to have an average goal scored that is above the league, then surely you should be expecting something good from that particular match. So let us click on the head to head new and let's see what we have there. So in this particular segment, there are so many factors that I always consider there, because they provide enough data in this particular segment, which happens to be the head to head new. Now, if we are to look into this particular head to head new, we have a particular segment that says that okay, the match that the home team played at home, and the data for the match that the away team played away, and they are going to give you the percentage of the outcomes of those games. For example, in case you are going for half time, they are going to give you the percentage of games that have ended up in the half time as over goals in the last previous games. But in this particular situation, we are looking into over 1.5 goals, and if we are to look into percentage of this over 1.5 goal segment, we have it here that okay, the away team had 90% of over 1.5 goals game ended while playing away, and for the home team they also had 90% while playing at home. Actually, this particular game I've tried to use it, this particular strategy I've tried to use it for rollover, but I was trying to go on going for over 0.5 goals. But trust me, most time the bookmakers will not provide a good market in case you want to play extremely safe on over 0.5 goals. So the best you can actually go for now is just over 1.5 goals. Right, so we have 90% for the home team and 90% for the away team, and this shows a good percentage to go for as over 1.5 goals. So in addition, there are some other factors that you can also consider, and don't forget I told you earlier that the average, some teams have some leagues have their average goal scored, and if you have to look at this particular segment that talks about goal scored, you can see that beneath it we have the league average goal scored, which happens to be 3.15, and the both team average goal scored, which happens to be 3.84. If you are using this particular bet platform, if you click on the green arrow beside it, you are going to see some descriptions that say that the combined team average is higher than the league average. This is an insight that at least this particular team ending up against each other can actually fixing them against each other can actually make the game to end up in over goals. At least something around maybe 3 goals or 2 goals in this particular game. And also most times I always consider a particular factors, which happens to be the percentage of average goals scored, which is at 79 80% and above. And sometimes I always make a consideration on games that have average goal scored of over 1.5 at 79% sometimes. So this particular game has some factors that validate the reason for going for it as over 1.5 goals. Now let us check the odd allocated to it by the bookmakers. Actually, if we are to go for this particular match as over 1.5 goals, you guys can see that the bookmakers are allocating an odd of 1.08 odd for this particular game. But if you want to validate the probability of outcomes of this particular game based on the odd provided by the bookmakers. Alright, so this is how to do the calculation. We have 1.08 as the odd allocated for the over 1.5 goals, and we want to know the kind of percentage of possible outcome that the bookmaker are assuming for that particular market. So let us divide 1 divided by 1.08 times 100. So this shows that 92% or 93% for that particular odd and for that particular market is the probability outcome of the game, which happens to be 93%. Okay, it's a very good percentage assumed by the bookmakers, but we are mostly concerned about our own stats. Bookmakers are allocating odds based on their own profit actually, and they know that games that will actually end up winning, they need to allocate something that will be very small. That is, when you win your game, it will not really affect them. So alright, so that is the first game on today's list, which happens to be the match between Tottenham and Newcastle. That is the best based on the start. The game is expected to actually end up as over 1.5 goals. Alright, so the number 2 game on the list happens to be the match between Manchester City and West Ham, and based on my own observation on about this particular over 1.5 goal stops, West Ham, considering their behavioral factors, West Ham seems to be conceding goals a lot of these days, and they are not really informed. The same thing applicable to Manchester City. West Ham are not informed, and the same thing applicable to Manchester City because they are still struggling even though they win their last game. And if we are to look into their last previous games, both the last 5 games against other teams and against each other. Alright, so looking at both teams' last 5 games against other opponents, you will notice that at least most of their games always end up in 80% of over 1.5 goals, and the same thing goes to the away team also. That is, their last 5 games against other opponents, most of their games always end up as over 1.5 goals. And looking at their last previous games against each other, we have it that in the last 5 games against each other, most of their game even ended up as 80% over 2.5 goals. So this particular game is a perfect game to actually go for as over 1.5 goals in case you are not using this particular bet platform. But in case you want to further do your analysis or need to check most of the average points scored, and if you are to look at it, we have it here that their percentage of over 1.5 goals occurred to be 92%, and which is even more than the league percentage, which is 82% based on this particular app. And in this particular segment, they have a very close point to the average goals scored in the league, and for both teams, because if you notice very well, the home team is actually struggling, and there happens to be a team that many people are actually expecting to be winning games very well. But looking at this particular game, both teams will try their best in order to utilize against each other's weakness. And if we are to look into the last their home team percentage of over 1.5 goals, and the away team, while they are playing away, percentage of over 1.5 goals, at least the combination of these particular two teams will provide us a great result, because the home team is actually having 89% and the away team is also having 89%. So let us quickly check on the odd allocated for this particular game as over 1.5 goals by the bookmakers, and surely we can easily conclude on the percentage of the possible outcome. So if you have to look at it, currently the bookmakers are allocating 1.10 odd for the prediction of the over 1.5 goals of this match, and doing the analysis of the percentage of it, it is very very easy and very fast to do. And surely the percentage of the what the bookmaker seems to be assuming the probability outcome of this particular match is 90% with this particular odd of 1.10 odd. All right, so let us move on to the next game so that we won't waste much of our time. And the purpose of putting you guys through this process is that we have games that we have different factors, but they will be qualified to be predicted as over 1.5 goals. Alright, so number 3 match that is expected to end up as over 1.5 goals in today's video is the match between Brighton and Arsenal. So let us check the last 5 games of these teams and let us see what are the factors that we considered to conclude on this game as over 1.5 goals. Alright, so don't forget I told you guys earlier that over 1.5 goals seems to be an easy market compared to predicting over 2.5 goals, and there are so many factors that you always need to consider before you conclude on predicting your games as over 1.5 goals. So you have to consider the last 5 games against each other and the last 5 games against other opponents, and in case you are able to possess this particular bet platform, it will be a great privilege for you, because there are also average stats that you need to also look into before going for any game as over 1.5 goals. Alright, so if you are to look into this particular game, you also need to look into the average goals scored, which there are so many factors that you just need to consider in short, because if you look at the last 5 games against each other, we can see that 100% of the last 5 games ended up in over 1.5 goals. And also I told you that behavioral factors is also very important. If you notice of recent, most of Arsenal players are currently injured, some of them, and some of their key players to be precise. And based on the updates that I got day before yesterday, I realized that some of them will be participating in this particular match. So if you are to look at it, so most of their last 5 games against each other ended up as 80% match ended up as over 1.5 goals for the home team, except for the away team that are currently experiencing, even though they are winning their games, but with a slight winning in some games, like the match between against Ipswich, which was expected to see maybe like over 1.5 goals or more to that. Alright, so going to their head-to-head if we have to look at it, they have at least 82% of their games ending up as over 1.5 goals, and they have 3.53 goals scored average, which is more than the league average. And looking at their last 5 games, their last previous games at home for the home team and away for the away team, we can see that the away team had 80% and the home team had 78%, something very close to 80%. This particular game can be a very tough game to end up as 1.5 games, because looking at it, most of the factors are not really complete, but a slight probability of ending up as 1.5 goals is possible in this particular game. But let us quickly check the odd allocated to it by the bookmakers, and let's conclude on what we have there. Alright, so the bookmakers are allocating 1.25 odd to this particular game, and let me quickly check the odd, the probability of outcome of the odd. Alright, so we are currently having 80% as the probability that this game will actually end up as over 1.5 goals. Based on the start, the game has a very tight probability of coming out as over 1.5 goals, but it is actually expected to end up as over 1.5 goals. So that's why I say that so many games we have different factors that can actually affect the analysis, and based on this stats, that is why we always consider different factors in order to conclude on what to predict games as over 1.5 goals. Alright, so the 4th game is under the England Championship, and this particular game against between Norwich and Coventry City seems to be a very tight game, but based on some factors, we considered it a match to actually end up as over 1.5 goals. Let us check the start and let's look at the last 5 games against other opponents. So for the home team, we can see that in the last 5 games they had 80% of their game ending up as over 1.5 goals, and for the away team the same thing happened also. But let us check the last previous games against each other. Fortunately, 80% of their games also ended up as over 1.5 goals. And let us move on to the head to head, where we are going to be checking the average goals scored against the league average. So look at it, we can see that the league average goals scored seems to be 2.73 odd, 73 goals. And for the match, for the two teams we have 2.96. It is actually a very good percentage. And looking at the percentage of the over 1.5 goals also, we can see it in the range of 82%, which happens to be a very good percentage. It actually seems to be a very good percentage for us. And looking at their last the home team overall and the away team percentage of 1.5, the home team actually had 100% and the away team had 77%. This percentage is actually very good for me, and the game should actually end up as over 1.5 goals. But if you are seeing the bookmakers allocating big odds to games like this, it is probably because of the goals scored in the league average. So let us look at the odd given to it by the bookmakers. And all right, so currently the bookmakers are allocating 1.29 odd for this particular game. Actually, I won something similar to this by far yesterday, because sometimes the bookmakers will be allocating a very small odd to games that are expected to come out as over 1.5 goals, and also they will be allocating a very big odd to games that are even expected to come out as over 4.5 goals or over 3.5 goals. Such example of it Example of games that bookmakers can actually convince you with as over 1.5 goals based on the odds is this particular match between Rennes and Nice, that actually ended up in 3-2. In the first half of the game, the match was actually around 3-1 before it actually ended up in 3-2 in the second half. So based on the odd, I think it is not always good to be convinced by the bookmakers based on the odd. Sometimes you can be misled based on the odd. So the fact that the stats and also factors are very important when it comes to predicting over 1.5 goals. And I've learned a lot of lesson about being scared about the odds allocated by the bookmakers. Alright, so the last match, which happens to be the fifth match in this particular video, is under the Turkish Super League, and that is a match between Galatasaray Istanbul against Goztepe. And let us check the start and let's see the factors there before we can conclude on predicting it as over 1.5 goals. Alright, so looking at the last 5 games of these particular two teams, we can see that the home teams, most of their games actually is ending up even as over 3.5 goals. Wow. And it mostly ended up in both teams to score. And going to the away team also, we can see that most of their games also ended up in over 2.5 goals, at least 80% of their games. And going on to their last previous games against each other, we can see that most of their games also ended up in 100% over 2.5 goals. Wow, this is fantastic. Now let us look at the head-to-head new, and let us look at the additional factors that we can also consider. Most times their league average of goals scored seems to be 3.15, which shows that they score goals very well in this particular league. And also their goals scored from both teams seems to be 4.88, which happens to be a very good numbers. And looking at their last previous games, average point of over 1.5 goals, we can see that 88% occurred, and this is fantastic. Let us check the overall home performance as over 1.5 goals and the away team also. So for this we have 89% for the home team, we have 75% for the home team. This particular percentage can actually still be managed. And let us look at the odd allocated to it by the bookmakers, and let's conclude on what we should be expecting. Unfortunately, the odd has actually dropped. Initially, when I saw this particular game first, the odd was around 1.12 odd. Now the odd has dropped to 1.09 odd. There's updates on allocating odd to most of the games, and only the bookmakers knows the reason why they always change the odd for each game. So alright, so we have the last 5 games as over 1.5 goals at odd of 1.09 odd. That is a match between Galatasaray and Goztepe. And we have just 5 games And with this just 5 games, we actually got our accurate 2 odd for today's. And in case we have some other analyst that is currently watching this particular video, you can also consider and drop your own opinion and possible outcome of this particular game in the comment section. All opinions will be welcome. I would like to see your own viewpoint based on the stats that we just explored right now. So thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video. Don't forget to join most of our group, our Telegram channel, and also our WhatsApp VIP group. And also, in case you want to have ask any questions regarding to the process that we just had, you can actually drop it in the comment section. Bye.